cruelty of the darkness. Up until now, no matter how scary it may have been, the darkness was simply the absence of light, and a shadow just means a light is shining nearby and nothing in the dark can harm me. At least, that's what I thought to be true. Not long ago, I was staying over at a friend's house. His father being away for the weekend, he wanted some company. I went over, shared some laughs, ate some pizza, and watched a few movies. Some hours and a couple of beers later, the night was getting old, and we decided it was time to go to bed. After setting me up on the futon lounge that I had spent most of the night on, I just laid down and tried to sleep. In unfamiliar surroundings, I was a little unsettled to begin with, not knowing where everything was. Random noises, along with the addition of the hissing from a battery operated air freshener, wasn't helping. Startling me for the final time, I got up and felt my way to the other side of the room. Ripping the device off the wall and taking out its battery, I cursed at it. Putting the device back, I turned to place the battery on the table in the center of the room. From behind me, I had the sensation of eyes watching my every move. Having had this feeling many times before, I ignored it. After looking up from placing the battery down, my gaze met with a very frightening sight. A sliver of light coming through the curtains lit up a small part of the room. At first, it looks like a run-of-the-mill shadow, a trick of the eye. But as I stared at the entity, seemingly frozen in place, my hair stood on end and I began to get goosebumps as I realized something that I didn't notice at first. This one seemed to radiate pure darkness, seemingly sucking up light I could make out of no features thanks to the now almost total darkness. Realizing it could see me as well as I stood there for what felt like hours hoping for it to just leave me alone. The feeling of fear and anxiety it was giving me was too much to bear. I couldn't tell if it had sucked up the last of the light in the room or if I had blacked out. The answer came just after sunrise. Taking a battery to the face, reality set in and I realized I was still standing in the same spot. As I expected, after telling my friend what had happened, he did as most would do laugh it off. He reassured me that I must have been sleepwalking, and that any sign of the massive darkness was manufactured in my sleep. Wanting to believe him, I laughed as well, and after our day's activity, I headed home. Last night, I went to bed, as usual, listening to some music to help me sleep. Later on, I became aware of an uneasy feeling in the room. Ignored it. I kept my eyes tightly shut, listening to my favorite songs. Sometime later, I turned my MP3 player off and put it on the table next to my bed to avoid choking myself with the headphones while I sleep. That feeling again. Almost instantly, my eyes watered up and began to shake my fear loose just long enough to put my head under the sheets. I closed my eyes and screaming into the pillow I was holding and prayed for it to leave. I worked up the courage to look eventually. Like a predictable horror plot, I knew I shouldn't have, but I did anyway. Oh, what a mistake that was. There it was again, the darker than dark humanoid figure standing in the foot of my bed, seemingly mocking my very existence. Locked in place, our gazes met each other's, like that night at my friend's house. After standing completely still for a mere few minutes, this time the figure silently walked towards me, a single hand outstretched. I ducked under the sheets again, hoping nothing would happen. I woke what seemed almost instantly to find that I was in an unfamiliar place that I somehow knew. The halls of this place being cold, I wrapped my blankets around me and began nervously walking down a hallway. Reaching the end of the hallway, I hear a female voice inviting me inside a room. I scream in panic as I enter, only to be grabbed by a man who looked into my eyes and screams at me with a blood-curdling hatred. Snapping back to reality, I woke up to the figure in the darkness, only this time it was floating over me a mere few inches from my face. While silently staring into my innermost fears, a mouth started to reveal itself, along with a wide smile formed of jagged teeth. Hyperventilating, I happily passed out after some time, not wanting to see the horror before me any longer. Now I can feel myself beginning to change. Ever since that fateful night, darkness overtakes my every thought. I can't function properly. I can feel myself fade away a little more every time the light goes out. This is my hell. The Bygone Scarecrow. I moved into a new house a few days ago, and I don't mean new as the house itself, which was constructed in the late 1800s. Outside the house is mostly covered by tall green strands of grass, circled by a wooden fence. Along the fence is an old scarecrow. It was mostly composed of old fabric, wood, and moldy styrofoam. Half its face was illuminated by the bright light of the moon, while the other half was submerged in the shadows. Its eyes were made of old stones, squished into a moldy styrofoam ball, and topped with an old straw hat. I walk away from the window and sit down on my bed, darkness coating the walls of the room like a blanket covering a bed. I look to the left to only be greeted by glowing red numbers. 1:35 a.m. the clock read. I lay down in bed and softly drift off to sleep. After what seemed to be hours, I wake up to the sound of metal against metal faintly coming from the other side of the window. I sit up and stare in the direction of the noise. I couldn't see the ground outside, so I get up and walk towards the window. I look down. I was met with the scarecrow still standing in the cold, dark night. By the time I had reached the window, the noise had stopped. I looked in all directions, scanning the entire yard in the process, but to my surprise, there was nothing out of the ordinary. Well, that was until I noticed something strange. Something was off about the scarecrow. It looked different. It looked older. It appeared as if a century had gone by while I was sleeping. It was definitely much older now. I scanned my surroundings, and everything was the same. Nothing seemed any older than it was before I went to bed. The scarecrow had more mold, the stone eyes were smaller and more gray, and they had a slight reddish tan, almost as if they were glowing. I turned to look at my clock, only noticing the numbers weren't numbers. The 7-segment display had strange symbols that appeared alien. I walk over and flip on the light switch, but when I did, something weird happened. When I flipped the switch, the light bulb had delayed a little before actually turning on. I didn't really pay attention to it and walked over to my desk, which had happened to be right in front of the window, and I sit down and log onto my computer, which happened to be a big chunky thing. I move my mouse cursor over the taskbar to check the time, and notice the time, date, and day were all strange symbols. They appeared to be Greek letters. I also noticed the internet wasn't working. I shut down my computer and stare at the wall, trying to possibly make sense of the current situation. That's when I hear a loud bang come from outside. I jump out of my chair to look out the window, only to see the scarecrow was gone. I start panicking, trying to find where the scarecrow could have possibly gone. Then I hear something. The sound of old cloth and wood, stretching and pulling, faintly coming from the darkness of the stairs outside my bedroom. I immediately get up and shut the door as quickly as possible, locking it in the process. I reach in my pocket and grab my phone and dial 911, only to be left with a dead signal. I hop into bed and stare at the door, waiting for something to happen. The sound was getting closer, so close that it sounded like it was right outside my bedroom door. That's when I wake up. I look in the direction of my clock to see that it was now perfectly working, 6:12 a.m. The sun was barely peeking over the horizon. I get out of bed to look out the window. When I did, my heart dropped. The scarecrow still wasn't there. Weeks have passed now, and I still have no clue where that scarecrow went. And sometimes, when I'm sleeping at night, I hear the sound of stretching fabric and wood. Bedtime voices. Sleeping is often considered a luxury by many. I can understand why. You've had a long day at work with your boss yelling at you about fucking up the reports. As you drive home, you get a flat tire, and the people in the traffic you've unintentionally created start yelling at you. When you finally get home, all you have to eat is some leftover seafood and bagged vegetables. After watching Wheel of Fortune reruns for the thousandth time, you finally arrive at your mattress. You've changed into your pajamas, most likely just a shirt and PJ bottoms. Maybe in the summer you're in boxers instead. The covers are then pulled back, making a weird scraping sound. You don't care. You're too tired to process how grating it could actually be. Then your head hits the pillow. If you have trouble sleeping, you might take some pills or go on your laptop and watch cat videos until you fall asleep. I, on the other hand, find falling asleep to be a personal hell. I hear him talking to me as I remember all the ways that I had fucked up earlier that day. I forgot to lock my apartment door before I went to work. Thankfully, no robbery had occurred. I accidentally spilled my coffee onto a coworker. At least it had cooled down by then. However, he's still there. I hear his voice just criticizing me, of course. I hear his voice just criticizing me. Of course, I could tell him to fuck off. He just gets more aggressive, violent, in fact. He tells me to do things. Originally, they weren't that big. He wanted me to spew out minor insults to people I didn't give a shit about. I didn't really do it though. I didn't want to entertain him and have him gain control. Now, though, he's taking advantage. He wants me to delete all social media, shut myself away from the world. He tells me to quit my job, since I'm already shit at following instructions. Tell my friends that I hate them. He wants me to lie for his own sadistic enjoyment. The nighttime is the worst. My mind is already bad enough, but being half asleep and already being destroyed by my own thoughts just makes me more vulnerable. It's easier for him to enter and assault me. He wants to pull the strings, and soon I might lose my sanity. It's 4 in the morning, and I'm trying to distract myself from him. It's the only thing I can do to possibly stay sane. I can't get antipsychotics due to it conflicts with my epilepsy medication. All I can do is grin and bear it. Wake up every morning at 11 with his voice still quietly beating my brain. Things will get better by 2, as I'll be more awake and kind of stable. My boss will yell at me, like always, for being 10 minutes late. That's when the paranoia and voices return. You can't do anything right. They hate you. You fucked up again, just like always. They're watching you. Stop looking at me. The others will probably think I am insane, since I'm sweating and my eyes are rapidly looking all over the place. What else can I do, though? I have no more options. I can only listen and get mentally annihilated. I look at my clock, done thinking about how the day is going to play out. It's 6 a.m. and the sun is rising. Looks like it's time for you to wake up, and time for me to escape my hell.